denied repeated requests for all of his classified documents for more than a year, and President Biden's lawyers turned in documents after finding them?
No, because from one standpoint, they knew the documents were there. They actually asked President Trump to put another lock on them, so they were locked. You look at President Biden. He wasn't president. He was vice president. He held these in different locations right out in the open. He criticized President Trump. Did he utilize the Justice Department to raid President Trump? Did you think that was right? They knew this has happened to President Biden before the election, but they kept it a secret from the American public. He goes on 60 Minutes, criticizes President Trump, even knowing what he has done, and he wasn't president at the time. Now we find another location that it's at, but he refused to answer. His press secretary won't answer the questions. You watched them leak photos of sitting out files of President Trump. Where's the photos of President Biden's documents? Where are those photos at? He knowingly knew this happened going into election, going into interviews. This is what makes America not trust their government. You cannot have one form of law because somebody philosophically has a different opinion than you, and you can't use the Justice Department to go after people that are politically different as well. It has to be equal across, and what I'm finding what's happening with President Biden time and again, you go from a laptop saying it not only that it wasn't true, but utilizing your own friends to go into companies to tell them to say the same thing, to try to knock down information, to try to make sure the New York Post story couldn't be printed. You should be offended by that. You are of the press. You should be allowed to write even when you knew it was true. So,
If you allowed to
yes, sir.
Entitlement reform this Congress, and if so, would you be open to including higher taxes as part of those reforms?
Look, the one thing I know, I've watched when Republicans were in power those 8 years, discretionary spending increased zero. I watched Democrat take over for 4 years. They increased it by 30%. They went from $4 trillion to $7 trillion. I watched a $31 trillion debt. I watched inflation grow under their fiscal policies. We've got to get our house in order. So the one thing I will tell you as Republicans, we will always protect Medicare and Social Security. We will protect that for the next generation going forward. But we are going to scrutinize every single dollar spent. It's the right, it's the hardworking taxpayer that actually pays it, and we want to make sure it's spent wisely and not the way the Democrats have spent.
On inflation,
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I want to ask, so there's been some interest among some of your rank and file Republicans to possibly introduce a resolution to expunge one of former President Trump's impeachments or possibly vote. What do you think of that? Is that something that you would be supportive of?
I'd have to look, when you find that the final information that the Russia document was all a lie, when you watch what went through, I'd understand why members would want to bring that forward. Our first priority is to get our economy back on track, secure our borders, make our streets safe again, give parents the opportunity to have a say in their kids' education, and actually hold government accountable. But I understand why individuals want to do it, and we'd look at it.
Now, a bunch of Republicans, about 20 of them last Congress, called on Speaker Pelosi at the time to release the adjacent Capitol Hill security footage of all things that happened on that day. Is that something that you'd be interested in doing? Congressman Gates said that you would be willing to do that. Is that true?
Yeah, I think the public should see what has happened on that day. I've watched what Nancy Pelosi did, where she politicized it, where for the first time in the history as a speaker, not allowing the minority to appoint to a committee, to pick and choose. We watched the politicization of this. I think the American public should actually see all what happened instead of a report that's written for a political basis. And I think the answer. We're looking through that. I want to be very thoughtful about it, but yes, I'm engaged to do that.
What would be shameful treatment?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. On the debt ceiling, can you guarantee that Republicans will provide votes necessary to raise the debt ceiling and avoid?
Look, we want to make sure we don't want to put any fiscal problems to our economy, and we won't. But fiscal problems would be continuing to do business as usual. I remembered when Trump was president and Nancy Pelosi was speaker, they became a debt ceiling agreement, and it was a cap agreement for 2 years to cap the spending and make those decisions. This is something that people have utilized. But I ask all of you and all Americans, if you have a child and you give them a credit card and they spend the limit, so you increase the limit again and again and again, when does it end? We've got to change the way we are spending money wastefully in this country. And we're going to make sure that happens. It's a hard-working taxpayer to do it. Paul, how are you?